that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all of the times you keep your camera and microphone switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a question, then they should press the hands up icon. And I'll come to you in order then, which I received the request, and please lower your hand once you've finished speaking. So I'll now proceed to the agenda business. Item 1 of the agenda is apologies for absence, and we've been told everyone's present. Thank you, Gareth. Item 2 is to approve the minutes of the last meeting held on the 27th of February 2023, and this is for correctness only. And I put those to you, pages 742 to 755 for correctness. Does anyone have any issues about their correctness? And if not, can I have someone to move that they are a correct record?
I'll move the correct record, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Please show if you're not in favour rather than I'll get a show of hands. No, that's okay. That's carried unanimously. Item 3 of the agenda then is to receive any declaration of interest and the nature of such interests under the Code of Conduct. Are there any? Nope. Take that silence as no. Item 4 then on the agenda is Audit Wales, Springing Forward, Vale Little Morgan Asset Management and Workforce Planning, Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, 15th of March 2023, a referral from that committee to Governance and Audit. Tom.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Thank you for taking the reference this evening. As you say, this is from Corporate Performance and Resources Committee. It's of 2 reports that Audit Wales have undertaken. It was a piece of national work that was done as a result of the pandemic across all local authorities, but we've got specific local reports associated with the work. The first, as you say, was around assets, the second around the workforce, and really looking at our ability now to take those assets and people and respond to the challenges that the environment is facing. So the work that Audit Wales undertook resulted in a number of recommendations, 3 in total. One for the assets aspect of the work, which was around strengthening the application of the Sustainable Development Principle in relation to asset management. In terms of the workforce piece, again, Audit Wales recommended that there's opportunity within our planning for the use of people to strengthen the Sustainable Development Principle in relation to workforce planning, but also in terms of monitoring arrangements as well. For completeness, attached to the reference, you've got both of the audit reports themselves, which the Scrutiny Committee saw. You've also got in Appendix C the Council's proposed response, and that's what we're particularly bringing to your committee this evening, Chair. And this is in your oversight role for regulatory recommendations. You'll notice within the action plan that many of the dates are either current or have been completed. In relation to the workforce piece of work, we're currently concluding the consultation on our people strategy, and that includes the workforce plan and the workforce strategy as well. And that's being presented to the Scrutiny Committee tomorrow evening by the head of HR. In terms of the assets piece, the findings that were very much welcomed from Audit Wales have been reflected in the new corporate asset management plan that was reported to committee in parallel with this report last month. So bringing the report to your committee this evening, Chair, as I say, in your role as having oversight for the Council's regulatory recommendations, to really assure yourselves as a committee that you're happy with the consideration that we've given to the pieces of work by Audit Wales, the recommendations and our responses, and any views that you may have then as a committee would be referred on to Cabinet. Once Cabinet then have endorsed the action plan associated with this work, it will be regularly monitored and reported to elected members through the scrutiny committees via performance monitoring, and then 6 monthly to your committee holistically.
Thank you for that, Tom. Members, any questions? Nigel?
Sorry, there's a lot more buttons to press now. Thank you for that, and thank you for clarification, Tom, around the dates as well, because that was one that we did have some queries about. Just under the recommendations and the responses to them, the actions, under which one? Well, workforce planning R2, it says include the last bullet point on that page. Says include success criteria in the workforce plan, including monitoring arrangements. I just wonder whether that sort of thing, whether we can start focusing a bit more on outcome-based success criteria, so something focusing more on outcomes. So rather than saying we've got 20 people in the role, it's did the 20 people in the role achieve what the council wanted it? Did it achieve the end results you're actually looking for? So it doesn't necessarily need to include now, but something where we could start building in that more outcome-focused look on actions would be great in terms of looking forwards. So that was my only comment.
Thank you, Mr. Ireland, and certainly, and having made that comment during the consultation is certainly something that I can make sure is reflected in the final version.
Okay, members, any other questions? No, just the one from me, Tom, in regards to when these referrals get brought to or made referred to Governance and Audit Committee. If in the future we could just have a short covering report outlining obviously what you want us to do, and also then picking up, you know, that you very kindly picked up some of the points in regards to the action plan. The actions have taken place, strategies are now in place, and that's moving forward. So at least then we've got a fuller picture from a written report rather than you sort of having to do it orally at the meeting. And it may well be that you know, a copy of the strategy or whatever's been done would may be useful as well for members, just to ensure and to satisfy themselves that they have the assurance that everything's been taken forward.
Thank you, Chair. And with your permission, what I'll do is have a conversation with my colleagues in Democratic Services about the best way to facilitate that. It may be that what we can do actually is include information within the initial report as well, and then very much make that clear to your committee in terms of the specifics, so that everybody is seeing one report. But leave it with me, and I'll do what we can and bring something back at the next meeting.
Thank you, Tom. Very grateful. If there are no other questions, any comments? No, if there's no comments, someone prepared to move the recommendation that I think we note the contents of report, endorse the action plan and refer it to Cabinet. Someone move, please.
I move.
Thank you. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Hooper. Can anyone against? No, thank you, that's carried. The next item on the report is item 5, which is Q3 progress against external regulatory recommendations and proposals for improvement. Tom, you again?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. And building on our last item, this is the regular update as a Governance and Audit Committee that you receive against all of the external regulatory and internal regulatory recommendations that are made to the Council. We bring this report to you as a sort of composite, if you like, of all of those the recommendations that have been made. This is a piece of work that is monitored regularly internally by the Insight Board of Officers and reported to the Strategic Leadership Team. The individual recommendations are reported to scrutiny committees as part of the corporate performance reporting arrangements. But in order to enable you to have a kind of holistic view in your role as having oversight against this regulatory work, we produce this report for you twice a year. The first time you see it is as part of the annual self-assessment report in the autumn, and now again early into the new financial year. So you're seeing Q3 at this particular point. What the report does is give you the background to how these recommendations make their way into the tracker, and then there's an appendix for you, Chair, in terms of giving a snapshot, if you like, of the progress that has been made. There's a total of 46 6 recommendations, both national and local, that have been made and that are currently work in progress. 35 of those have been attributed a green status, 4 an amber status, and then 7 have been attributed a red status because they are not on track as originally intended. The appendix then goes on to present those recommendations on a line-by-line basis, initially for local regulatory work, then latterly for national regulatory work. And then finally, within the appendix, you can see a list of the actions that are being proposed as now having been completed. There's some commentary provided against each of them to demonstrate where we're at, and specifically if any of them have got an amber or red status, to explain some of the context as to why. As I say, we're bringing it to your committee this evening for oversight in terms of the overall picture of our external regulatory environment, with any comments that your committee may have going back to Cabinet, and then we'll further track these in the coming months.
Thank you, Tom. Members, any questions? Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it would just be useful to have your view or sort of clarity on. So there's ones marked in here which are marked as green as a status, but the target date is old, so it's like March 2021. So can you just provide a bit of clarity around essentially why they're green? So just provide that, and whether we would be able to have another column in the report for those ones that are still outstanding of when there's a date that we could have when we expect those ones to be completed. Would that be possible for future reports?
Certainly, I can look at a way that we can present this to show, in effect, some of the ones that perhaps we are maintaining on the register, but they are in effect considered complete. And there's, I suppose, an example would be the one relating to the leisure review. That piece of work is marked as being green with a target date of being completed, as you say, in March 2021. We're keeping that one under wraps. It's been particularly mentioned in Audit Wales's programme and annual audit report. So what we're doing is making sure that one's maintained on there as a bit of a kind of watching brief until, as officers, we feel that it's timely to recommend that then is marked as being formally completed. But I think what might be useful is perhaps if we introduce a completed status, so that you'd be able to understand why they're still maintained as a kind of watching brief, rather than completed ones that we want to remove because we think the work is done and no further reporting is required.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Matthew?
Thank you, Chair. I guess a similar sort of question, Tom. I guess what I would like to get a view of is what the relevant or the relative priorities of these are. I guess I'm looking at a long list and I don't know which are key from your perspective, which are nice to have, and that's why they've gone past the dates. So I guess some way to see what are the key pieces of work that need to be done, whether they are within date or overdue or whatever that is, would be useful as well, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And I think certainly something that I can ask colleagues to make sure that they reflect more accurately, perhaps in some of the commentary associated with them. It's difficult, I suppose, to talk about things that we're prioritising and deprioritising, because we would see all regulatory work as being obviously important to progress, but it's whether it's aligned with other pieces of work that we're, for example, there are a number of red statuses on some of the third sector work. That's not to suggest that we're not taking forward that work on the third sector, but actually we're doing some preparatory work that will allow us then to better respond to these particular recommendations in due course. But certainly I think some of the commentary could maybe be strengthened, and that would help members be able to see why we're progressing certain things perhaps quicker than others.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Any other questions, members? No, I just reiterate that, Tom, in regards to the red and amber statuses, I think a bit more narrative in regards to why they are red. And, picking up the points you just said there, that you're working on something else to ensure that you can deliver the red statuses a little bit later on. So they're not as bad as they are by being shown red. Okay, good. Any other questions, anyone? Any comments? No? The recommendations there then are, I think, that we note the council's progress to date in
Excuse me,
addressing...
Chair.
Sorry? Oh, Councillor Goodjohn, my apologies.
No, that's absolutely fine. Sorry, I just thought it was worth mentioning that there's quite legitimate reasons, particularly on some of the actions that have not been completed or are a little far from completing, particularly on CAT, community asset transfer, and on third sector work, particularly as there has been struggling. The voluntary sector liaison committee has been struggling to meet recently, and there's been struggling to get third third sector work done thanks to that. And actually one of the items actually states it explicitly as well. So there's quite legitimate reasons for those two sectors, for many of them being red. Otherwise, generally all right across the board, but there's work to be done on that, and I'm aware that the corporate performance and resources scrutiny committee will be doing work on that later on as well.
Thank you for that, Councillor Goodjohn, for that clarification. And it'd be just a little bit useful, as Thomas said, if we can pick it up in the narrative somewhere, that you know, and then they can all be tied up. Councillor Prothero, did you want to? No.
No, not really. I also understand the reasons why we've got a couple of reds, and certainly on the CAT work. And I'm grateful that most of our actions are green, to be honest.
Yeah,
the majority are. So that's really good work. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Councillor Prothero. Okay, if there are no other comments, as I said, move the recommendations. We note the council's progress to date in addressing the existing recommendations and improvement proposals made by the external regulators, informed by the views and recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee, and that we endorse the removal of the completed actions from the Strategic Insight Board, Insight Tracker, via recommendations to Cabinet, along with any of the views and recommendations of the committee, which obviously I'm sure Gareth will pick up. Someone prepared to move, please. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Prothero. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Can I go to agenda item 6 then, which is the Audit Wales Veryl Morgan Outline Audit Plan 2023. Steve?
Thank you, Chair.
And Sarah, it's a double act.
It is absolutely double-handed. Yes, thank you. but I'll kick things off, and Sarah will have the opportunity to comment in regard to some of the performance audit aspects at the latter stages. But purely because this largely covers some financial audit issues. The main focus of this plan is financial audit matters. And before I go into the document, just for a bit of context, the reasons why this document has been produced in this form is largely due to the slippage we've experienced within Audit Wales this year. This is a document we've been taking to various audit committees across a range of sectors, as pretty much like a holding interim plan in many ways, in readiness for a more detailed plan which will follow in due course. And that's exactly the same position we're here at with the council. And underpinning this document as well, there have been letters from the Auditor General and from our Executive Director of Audit Services setting out the changes to our audit timetables this year, and also the circumstances behind those changes. So I'll jump into the document a little bit now. It's quite a brief document, and for those of you who can remember our usual audit plans, it certainly would seem quite brief. It doesn't cover the usual content that you would have expected from our audit plans, but that's to come in due course. But in terms of this high-level plan, I suppose in many ways it sets out two main issues from my perspective. One is to make you aware of the audit team. And in regard to the audit team, got pretty good continuity this year in terms of what we've experienced from last year and indeed other years. But there are changes at the engagement lead level and the financial audit team leader level, albeit the change at financial audit engagement lead is one who is well known to the council because he's done the role recently for a number of years, and that's Anthony Veal. And the other message that this document really communicates is the audit timeline. You will note reference is made to the November audit deadline, and which is similar to what was communicated in the letters from the Auditor General and our Director of Audit Services. So it's a vehicle really in many ways just to communicate some of the key changes for this year to some extent, and also a bit of a holding position, and also perhaps explains why unfortunately, we're not in the fortunate position of having an actual final detailed audit plan for you this afternoon, but that's to come in due course. I'll stop there. I'll obviously take any comments later, but I give Sarah the opportunity to comment on some of the performance audit aspects.
Thank you, Steve. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Steve. Yes, as Steve said, this is an outline plan, and it just gives you a very high level overview of the work that we're proposing to undertake in terms of performance audit work, which is set out on page 8. Hopefully you'll be familiar with the assurance and risk assessment process. So just for those that aren't, this is a process that we do at all councils every year. This helps us, it is a kind of risk assessment really of arrangements and range of services to help us understand if there are any particular risks in terms of the council putting in place proper arrangements and meeting its duties in terms of the Sustainable Development Principle. And it also helps us understand, look at where we're going to focus our work in future years. So that is something that we do at all 22 councils. And we do feedback the findings from that to senior management team. And that essentially informs then what work we're going to do in future. We've decided then 2 thematic reviews that are mentioned there, one on commissioning and contract management and one on financial sustainability. You'll be aware we've done pieces of work on financial sustainability now for a number of years, so we're going to continue in that vein. But those 2 pieces of work will be piece of work that we'll do all 22 councils. And then the final one is a local piece of work. So that is a piece of work we're going to be doing at the Vale of Glamorgan, not at all 22 councils. And we've decided this year we're going to do a piece of work focusing on planning. That's the planning service as opposed to planning more generally. And that is the main reason, well, one of the key reasons for that is it's obviously a significant service. It underpins, a number of the different wellbeing objectives of the councils. And we haven't done a piece of work on this for some time, and we need to get some assurance around that. So we're currently scoping that piece of work, and we will, share a project brief and things like that. So just wanted to give you a quick overview around those pieces of work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Okay, you've heard Steve and Sarah Jane. Are there any questions from members? Nigel?
Sorry, double press on the hand there. Just one question, noting the report later on the agenda about the lessons learned from last year. Just wondering if there was going to be more of an on-site presence this year in terms of the audit programme, just in terms of, for going through queries or through just key stages of the audit, whether there's just planned to be a bit more on-site rather than just remote auditing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. This is something we've talked about with officers of the council, and it's certainly something that's on the table. We haven't set firm plans up yet. It's something I'm keen to explore, and it's something that's certainly likely to happen across most of my audits this year, if not all of them. There's certainly been more than last year, even if it's a case of just having meetings to discuss audit findings and clearance of those sorts of issues. At the minimum, that's going to occur, I'm absolutely sure, all being well, of course, if any re-emergence of any pandemic, hopefully not. But that's certainly the plan. The complication potentially is arranging it in such a manner that we are all on site at the council offices at the same time. Which is something we'd have to sort of make sure we sort of timetable and set up appropriately. So obviously it's pointless one or the other side being at the accommodation and the other isn't. So there's a few matters to work through, but yes, it's certainly the intention, but I don't think it'd be like it was prior to the pandemic, whereby we'd undertake the audit, we'd be there 5 days a week, every week, over a couple of months, more largely. But I think a hybrid solution to some extent is very likely.
Thanks, Steve.
Great, thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, just to confirm, we've Gemma and I on the team have been talking to Steve about this, and this is something we're very much open to and see the benefit from. It will be difficult to, in terms of the logistics, to make it happen, but I'm sure we can work that through.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions, members? No, clearly, just one for me in regards to the fee, Steve, this year, which I don't think has been set. And if you're doing very much a lot more remote working, then presumably the fee may reduce, given that there won't be any travelling expenses or anything like that. Is that the position?
Unfortunately, that's not quite the position. There's a number of I take your point, absolutely. There's other factors at play, inflation, cost of living, etc., being one. But the biggest factor really is also the fact there's audit quality in ISO 315. There's more audit work and more higher graded audit work being undertaken. The letter from the Auditor General, I think, sets out expectations in regard to fee increases, and I believe I haven't got the letter in front of me at the moment, so I stand corrected, but I think it could be 15% likely in terms of the fee increase for this year. But we are still working through the risk assessment work at the Vale for the slippage for the reasons I've explained. So we can't firm up the fee quite yet until all that risk analysis. So we've got a full understanding of the quantum of work, and we know what we need to undertake. But as a guideline, I think 15% is a fair approximation of what to expect.
Is that 15% on last year's fee?
It is, yes.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting, your work on sustainability and financial sustainability in local government then, fees to regulators. But that's a discussion for another time, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any comments? No? Okay, we've got two recommendations that we review and agree. I don't think we can agree the proposal. The plan is set by yourselves. So we note the proposed audit Wales outline audit plan for 23 for the Vale Glamorgan Council. That's number one. And then that the report be referred to the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee and thereafter to Cabinet for their oversight. That's recommendation 2. Can I have someone to move, please? Thank you, Nigel. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Prothero. Anyone object to that? No, that's unanimous. Can I thank you, Steve and Sarah Jane? You can stay on if you wish in the background, or your contribution's always most welcome. But thank you very much anyway for your presentation. Okay, the next item is the proposed accounting policies and timescales for 22-23 statements of account. Gemma?
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for having me. So I think this is a report that we indicated that we intended to bring when we brought the draft statement of accounts in July last year. So this sets out the accounting policies that we intend to use when preparing the statement of accounts for 22-23. They're largely unchanged from 21-22, although we have amended them to reflect a slightly different approach to the valuation of assets. So you may recall that last year we revalued all of our assets as part of the closure of accounts process, which is a large undertaking. And this year we've decided to revalue only the assets that are valued on a depreciated replacement cost basis, because that's where the majority of the risk lies, around that inflationary cost. And as part of that valuation approach, we'll also be requesting a kind of overarching letter from the valuer that will assess the market as a whole and hopefully give some comfort about the valuation attached to the remainder of our asset base. And we'll be doing this on the housing revenue account side and the remainder of the land and building side. In terms of timescales, which are also set out in the report, we're aiming for 15th of June finalisation of the accounts, but we're, between the 15th of June and the 30th of June. You may recall that last year we closed the accounts on the 5th of July, so aiming for to claw back some time from as part of that approach. And then just picking up a couple of issues that we'll be picking up as part of the accounts. We have, of course, had a restructuring year, and so we're required to prepare the statement of income and expenditure on the basis that we report on management accounts. So we will be reflecting the place and the corporate resources directorates and restating that statement to reflect that change. I think those are the main points I was going to pull out on the report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gemma. Are there any questions? Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just the one, which is only a point I'm not even sure whether you would know off the top of your head, but page 11 of Appendix 2, just in the policies on component accounting, it states that assets with a net book value in excess of 3 million will be reviewed to determine if there are any significant components, etc., etc., etc. Just wondering if that 3 million is comparable. Is that specific to the Vale, or is that comparable across other authorities?
I have done a little bit of research on this, and our 3 million is a little bit higher than some of the other authorities I've seen, but not significantly so. So I think some of the other authorities are quote figures like 2.3 million, 2.5 million. The 3 million is obviously below our materiality level and has been in place for certainly since 2014 when I came into post, and obviously the value of our assets has significantly increased during that time. So I'm comfortable with the £3 million level. I think it's the kind of level that authorities tend to set as part of their accounting policies and perhaps don't review enough. So we will have a look at the impact on the wider asset base. But I think in relation to the materiality, I'm comfortable with that 3 million's okay.
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Matthew?
Yeah, just a basic question, Gemma. Looking at the audit timetable, I think you've got quality assurance on the accounts for the 14th of June, and then providing the finalised statement on the 15th. And I just wondered whether you've given yourself enough breathing room, given on that timetable.
No, I think that's a really valid point. I think I tend to try and give everybody lots of time at the start of the accounts to get all the accruals through, and then I have less and less time towards the end of the accounts. And certainly QA is one of those things where you need time to work through anything that gets identified. I will go back to the timetable and see if we can allow more time. And I think that's part of the reason why I've been a little bit vague on the preparation of the accounts timeline, just to allow a little bit of contingency for if things go wrong along the way as well.
Thank you. Experience would, I mean, I'd love it to take a day, but experience is
Thanks, Matthew. Are there any other questions from members? Not one for you, Gemma. I think is the annual governance statement. Obviously, the draft statement of accounts and the draft annual governance statement will normally come to us, and obviously the deadline's been extended there. Do we anticipate that will meet the normal timetable or not? I don't know whether Andrew wants that or Matt.
Hi, we'll bring the annual governance statement alongside the draft accounts, so they'll come on the same meeting in July.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that clarity. Okay, if there are no other questions, are there any comments from members? No, there being no comments, then the recommendations are that the proposed timescale and resources considerations set out in Appendix 1 of the report be approved, and secondly, that the proposed accounting policies set out in Appendix 2 of the report be approved. Can I have someone to propose, please? Someone to move? Thank you, Matthew. And a seconder, Councillor Goodjohn. Anyone against? Please show. No, thank you. That's carried unanimously. Gemma, thank you very much again for your time. The next report then is the lessons learned, I believe. Preparation audit of the 21-22 statement of accounts, review and considerations of the lessons learned. Gemma, you again?
Yes, thank you very much. When I brought the accounts in July last year, I probably used the word challenging a record number of times. So I think we undertook to bring a lessons learned report, just looking back and hopefully identifying some opportunities for mitigating some of the risks and areas for improvement. And we had a really useful wrap-up session with Audit Wales to talk through the accounts preparation and the audit process. Because there were definitely some opportunities for improvement for this year. So I think resources will continue to be an issue. So I want to be really honest about that. We haven't expanded the team in that time. We are under less pressure from a grants point of view. We've had less late grants through, and there are fewer grant claims required, so that is helpful. And also the team members have had some time to settle into their new roles and become more familiar with some of their responsibilities. So I'm hoping that will help us out. So I'm hoping that with the reduced pressure from grants and organising ourselves slightly differently, giving ourselves more spread across the accounts and also some more experience on some of those accounting notes, will put us in a better position as we go through closing. We've also taken a slightly different approach, as I said, on the previous item to valuation. I think that puts us in a slightly better position as well. On the audit side, I think it was quite a elongated process, and I think certainly very limited members of the accountancy team engaging with Audit Wales, and that was a bit of a blockage in the process. And I think due to some of the resourcing issues then that Audit Wales had on their side, it meant that a number of members of teams were having to deal with the same issue, and some of those email trails became very elongated. I think what we're looking to on our side is get more members of the team involved in that audit process, and in part that will be facilitated on Audit Wales side by using the tool Inflow, which looks really helpful and will hopefully enable us to track issues and samples and outstanding requests for information as well. So I think that looks really positive. And we've also committed, as I think was picked up on one of the previous options items, that we will meet in person when it's required, because I think sometimes when you've got emails going backwards and forwards and team meetings, perhaps you don't get to the bottom of some issues. So I think there are definitely some real opportunities to improve on last year's performance, but I think on both sides, resourcing continues to be a concern. Okay.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you. Any questions, members? Councillor Goodjohn?
I know it's briefly covered in the report as part of mitigation part 3. Just how do you think the team is looking when it comes to vacant positions compared to this time last year? Do you feel you have enough resources to get through this at the same or better capacity as last time?
We don't really have many vacant positions. We did have we lost part of a post as part of the balance in the budget for 23-24. I think where we're struggling is perhaps some of the experience in the team that we've lost in recent years, and it just takes a little bit of time to build that up. And I think we've made real improvements from last year, but there's still a bit of a direction of travel. Does that help, Councillor Goodjohn, in terms of the response?
Absolutely. If I was aware that the vacant position, half of the vacant position had been taken away in the last budget, so just to know that you've still got enough resources, and if it, as you say, it's more to do with experience, that will come with time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Any other questions? No, I think just picking up from that point, Gemma, about resources, is that if there are any issues moving forward, then obviously I'm sure either you or Matt will raise it at the management team to ensure that, what we don't do is ensure that the staff are supported in ensuring that the budget is, the accounts are dealt with. And I think as an audit committee, if there are issues, then I think it does need to be raised at some stage, because we don't want people working extortionate amounts of time, and because there's a shortage of experience in the team. The other question is, maybe not for you, but maybe for Audit Wales, were there lessons learned from Audit Wales in regards to closing the accounts, not only in the Vale, but maybe wider across Wales? Do you know?
I'm not so sure about wider across Wales. One of the points is the question that was posed earlier, really, about less remote working. That's a theme that's emerging across not just local government audit, but across all audit sectors. There's a lot to be gained from that, both in terms of the efficiency of the audit and also just probably the quality of the audit, to be quite honest. You can sort of drill in and get question and see the whites of people's eyes, as the saying goes. So yes, but we had a really, just to pick up on Emma's point and also your question, Chair, we did have a really good sort of reflection, a good meeting, where we sort of, I suppose, challenged each other to some extent and sort of come at it from different angles. We had an internal team discussion first, and then we met Gemma and Matt and the team, and we sort of both come from different perspectives. But there's a lot of common ground, I felt, in terms of the areas to improve, and inflow is certainly one of them. So that's something Audit Wales have introduced on a number of other audits previously, and I'm yet to use it, but I've heard very good things about it, and I've attended a presentation, and so has Gemma, in regard to this, and I think it should be very effective. It's a bit of a one-stop shop in many ways, in terms of being able to share working papers, address audit queries, and obtain responses to those audit queries. So, obviously it's the first year of trying it. It may not be the silver bullet, so to speak, but that, in conjunction with more on-site working, I think will, would help a great deal.
Oh, thank you for that, Steve. It's great to hear that, even though we're on different sides of the fence, we can all learn lessons moving forward. And if that improves the way the process is undertaken, with everyone working to the same ends, that's good. That's good to hear, really, rather than, the regulators take one place, the council takes another. It's down to discussion, isn't it? And as you said, I always say I like to see the whites of people's eyes, because it makes it a lot easier. But no, it's great that lessons are being learned from both sides. So thank you for that, Steve. Thanks for that input. Thank you, Gemma. Are there any other questions, anyone? No, are there any comments? No? Okay, we go to the recommendations. I think that we note the review of the delivery of the 21-22 statement of accounts. And that we note the proposed and mitigated activities for the delivery of the 22-23 statements of accounts. Can I have someone to move, please? Someone to move the recommendations? Thank you, Nigel. Can I have a second there, Councillor Wood? Thank you very much. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Steve. Next item, agenda item number 9, is the Regional Internal Audit Charter for 23-24. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. And thank you for your very warm welcome at the outset of your meeting, Chair. Much appreciated. I'm Andrew Wathen. I'm the new head of the Regional Internal Audit Service, and this is day 7, so it's my second Governance and Audit Committee. This report is in relation to the Internal Audit Charter for the Regional Internal Audit Service. So it's consistent now across all 4 councils, and it will be delivered to all 4 Governance and Audit Committees. So, and the purpose of bringing it into your committee this afternoon, Chair, is for members to consider and to approve the Charter as we move forward into 23-24. The Charter itself is very comprehensive for the region. compared to other internal audit teams that I've seen, and sets out how we operate and how we function in terms of carrying out our business, which inevitably helps to provide you with the assurance that you need to undertake your business. Also sets out how we are compliant with the public sector internal audit standards. The charter itself was reviewed a couple of years ago, so it's very comprehensive and was presented into former audit committee and governance and audit committees, and will continue to do so on an annual basis following a review process. So for 23-24, it has been reviewed, and there are minor updates to the charter, and they relate to the inclusion of reference to the Nolan principles and public life, which will be included within our staff declarations, which we make on an annual basis, and also for the staff to make sure that they are compliant with the Vale's Code of Corporate Governance. That is the main issue and main change in terms of the revision for 23-24's charter. We make an annual declaration as staff members of the regional service, so that's just topping and tailing their chairs, making it improvement as we progress, but a minor change which is included in the charter. Also, to bring to your attention, members, is that as part of the process, part of the public sector internal audit standards, we undertake an annual self-assessment of compliance with the standards, and every 5 years we need an external assessment. It's been noted in the charter that is due in 22-23. It's currently being assessed by an external assessor, and it's been agreed that a peer Welsh Chief Internal Auditor will undertake that assessment, and the report will be reported into your Governance and Audit Committee in due course, Chair. So just so you got a headline of that, but that's been incorporated within the charter itself. So no major changes. Only something to reflect on from a staff perspective, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Members, questions? Nigel, I assume you're there waiting.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one from me, which is, I think it's a wording thing from different worlds. Just wanted to check under 2.1, the independence and objectivity standard. It says unrestricted access to members, which includes the Governance and Audit Committee. And then on the following page, 2.6 says the head of internal audit has unrestricted access to the chair of Governance and Audit Committee. Just in terms of clarification of language, does unrestricted, because if you read the earlier one, it sort of suggests that means almost for auditing purposes. But in terms of this, it's referring to if you need to escalate something, you can go straight to Gareth to actually escalate. You've got that reporting line, that you've got that support of being able to go to Gareth if you need to. Is that what that means?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's fairly standard wording in terms of public sector internal audit. It comes from our financial regulations, which form part of the Constitution, and it's fairly consistent across all internal audit teams. But it means that I've got a direct reporting line, which is Matt as head of finance within the Vale. As the head of the region, I report to the board, which is the 4 Section 151 officers. For pay and rations, basically, it's the Vale of Glamorgan. But if we come across any issues, then I escalate that to Matt if I need to. Or Gareth as the chair of Governance and Audit Committee, or the chief exec of each authority. So there's no restrictions on me gaining access to that level of authority within any organisation. Is how it's supposed to be. How it's intended.
Okay, no, that's great. Just wanted to clarify that. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions, members? No, Andrew, just a quick point for me, which is a drafting point. Obviously, the charter makes mention to members and elected members, and whether it was changed last year, I don't know. But obviously, we've now got lay members who are not elected members, and I just would like you just to have a quick look through it. I think paragraph 2.1, 2.6, and a few others make reference to elected members, and and it just needs to be redefined as for audit, certainly governance and audit as lay members and elected representatives. So,
yeah, I think that's a fair point, Chair. We'll build that into the review of the 23-24 charter for presentation in next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely. If there are no questions, any comments? No, if there are no comments, then go to the recommendation. I think the recommendation is that the Regional Internal Audit Service Charter for 23-24 is attached at Appendix A to this report be approved. Someone move, please. Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Good, John, thank you. Anyone against? No, thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Next one is the progress against the Internal Audit Risk-Based Plan 22-23. Hi, Joan.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. This report is to provide members of the committee with a position statement on the progress being made against the audit work included and approved within the risk-based plan for 22-23. The details in Appendix A, which is colour-coded for yourselves. It should be noted that 25 reviews have been completed with an audit opinion, 8 have been issued as draft, and a further 8 are under review. Therefore, it's estimated that 41 audits will be completed with an audit opinion for 22-23. In addition, work has also been undertaken when no opinion has been provided, and these are also indicated at Appendix A. Of the 25 completed audits to date, 5 have been given substantial assurance, 18 reasonable, and 2 a limited opinion. Explanations of the 2 limited assurance audits were provided in January 2023, and a total of 90 recommendations have been made to date. As reported during the year, the regional service has successfully recruited new audit staff during 22-23, but as previously highlighted as well, the new staff have had an impact on the current resources available to deliver the plan during the year because of the support and training that's been required. The plan was compiled assuming a full establishment, and although swap internal audit services have assisted, 15 planned audits have not been undertaken during 22-23, and these will be considered for the 23-24 plan. Appendix A also identifies 6 audits that have commenced, but these will not be completed in time for the 22-23 closing and will be reported on in 23-24. So whilst performance during 22-23 was lower than anticipated, it's felt that the 41 audits that will have been completed with audit opinions, together with the other sources of assurance that we take, including external reviews, will provide sufficient level of coverage to allow the head of audit to provide an opinion on the council's arrangements for internal control, governance and risk management for 22-23. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, for that. I see they're waiting. Nigel, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just regarding the ones that have been carried forward to 23-24. I just went back to the original plan that was approved, and of the 15 that have been carried forward to 23-24, 13 of them were classed as high priority at the beginning of the year, when I note that some of the medium priority ones have been completed, and another one, the PCI DSS, has been carried forward to 23-24 as well, but I note that that's in there's comments on that in the recommendation tracking paper later, so I understand that one. I think it's just 1.1 of the paper also states that the head of internal audit's role is to review and adjust the plan. I suppose the question from me is why were these high priority ones not done when medium priority ones were done, and how is that decision made? And then if I can, Chair, as well, I've just got a comment about some ideas for future reporting if possible, please, but I'll come to that later if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can take that. Yeah, as you said, the PCI DSS one is in the recommendation. As far as the audits that haven't been completed, the 15 that you've referred to, as I've said, we had vacancies within the team during the year, so we had to play to the strengths of the team. So the medium ones were done, and the high ones unfortunately couldn't be undertaken this year in our capacity, but obviously they will be carried forward into 23-24. As well as that, they off the top of my head, there were a few that we've had dialogue with the service departments, and for whatever reason, sometimes it wasn't appropriate when we were ready to go, and equally they've had issues within their services on some, and we try to accommodate where we can and as best we can. So it was a combination, but mostly down to the vacancies in the team. And hopefully moving forward, we've got very few vacancies now, and hopefully we will, be in a better place moving forward.
Okay, Nigel, do you want to make your comments when we come to comments?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Andrew, I didn't know whether you wanted to pick something up, but if not, Matthew's there for a question.
If I could, Chair, just to follow on from what Joan mentioned, in terms of service managers, we have to, maintain and try and make an effective working relationship with service managers to enable us to undertake our work. They're hard pressed this year to deliver frontline services, and sometimes audit is not their utmost priority. But we do have that discussion with them, and we don't not do the work. We try and fit it in, like maybe later on in the year if we can, or move things around. Unfortunately, this time around, the higher priority ones have kind of slipped a little bit, but that goes into our risk assessment for the planning process. And as Joan said, will be carried forward then into 23-24. We'll be contacting the service managers and the directors to make sure that they know that they are high priority audits, and we will need to undertake those sooner rather than later in the new year.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Matthew?
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, I think you might have answered part of my question there. I guess it's 15's quite a lot in the context, and I can completely get where you're coming from with changes in the year and that sort of thing. So I guess if I look forwards, and I'll ask how you're taking the lessons of this year into 2023-24, and I think I'd encapsulate both the number of audits, and I certainly agree with Nigel's points about prioritisation, and the PCI DSS one would flagged out to me as well, I guess. So I guess just some comfort that those lessons are being learned, and we find ourselves in a position this time next year where we've got a full complement of audits completed or close to.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the question. As Joan mentioned, we've got some vacancies in the team. We're hoping to fill those this year, to bring us up to a full complement of staff, which will enable us to deliver more of the plan. The plan is based on a full establishment. And in terms of prioritisation, we'll be reviewing that on a regular basis to make sure that we are achieving as much of the plan as we possibly can. And I've obviously read the annual report for last year. We report on performance and provide an update. We'll make sure that when we're reporting quarterly to Governance and Audit Committee, we'll be providing you with that particular information as well. And if there's anything else that you think of in terms of how better we can do that, then by all means we can have a conversation. We can consider that, and we'll work it into the reporting mechanism back into committee.
Thank you, Andrew. Is that okay, Matthew?
Yeah, can I be cheeky and ask one more question while we're here, Chair? 2.9, and it may just be my understanding. So you've got your annual report based on the internal audit activity, and then we're taking other assurance provision into account. Is that pretty standard? I guess it's not something I'm familiar with, but I'm conscious I come from a different background.
Yes, it's the short answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got experience of 2 other local authorities. I've been head of audit for 2 local authorities for the past 17 years. It's the same. We have discussions with Welsh Chief Auditors Group, and they're in the same position as well. We take assurance from the opinions which we issue during the year, plus any other assurance providers that we can talk to them and obtain that particular assurance throughout the year on various services that we can't get around in audit.
Do you, I guess the question from a cynical internal audit perspective then is how you assure that the quality of their services meets the bar that you set out in your charter?
That's a very difficult question to answer, I guess, because without redoing the audits, we can't rely on their quality, but we are aware that they need to comply with the public sector internal audit standards as well. In the majority of cases, with where we're getting the assurances from, we're dealing with people like Estin as well, so corporate, government regulators, where they provide us with assurance. So they've got quality assurance processes in place. It is difficult, but the majority of the assurance comes from our opinion work, which we issue.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience there, Councillor Prothero. Your question,
That's okay.
Well,
it's statements as much as questions.
Okay.
And welcome to the Vale, Andrew.
Thank you.
And it's a concern, and I know that, Chair, you've raised this before, and it's to do with the priorities of what we have already said are high priority, and the balance with the lack of resources. And it troubles me, I'll be honest, that some of these high priority areas have been not just moved 1 year, we were talking about them last year as well. So I suppose what I'd like to see, and I know that Joan has already explained that it might not have been the right time for the department, but I don't know whether, the culture for audit, it should be supportive, and now is the time, and we're going to help you with this audit, not push it back. And I hope that's not meant to be a criticism, because I do understand the work that you have to do, but I worry where we keep pushing back high priority cases. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Prothero.
I think that's a fair point, Councillor. We'll certainly take that into consideration in our discussions within the team and reporting into Matt and to SLT as well, because SLT will get quarterly updates, if not more regular than that, and I can have that discussion with the other heads of service and directors about being more accommodating in the service area for the audits that we've planned to undertake.
Yeah,
we've discussed the plan with heads of service and directors. They get an opportunity to contribute to it and to shape the audit plan, albeit I've got to take responsibility for delivering it. So our message is that we are working with service managers to help them and support them deliver a better service, protecting the assets of the councils also. So we can have those discussions, and we'll certainly take on board your comments and feed those into the discussions. Joan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I was just going to add, basically, I think it's been compounded the last year or so because of COVID and the disruption and things. Aspirations were there and plans were set during COVID, and then we went back into lockdown and hybrid working, all of those things. And I think it's only the last 6 months it's felt normal, and it felt like we were back in control and able to access these things. We can go out and do establishment audits. We're actually visiting, we're actually doing face-to-face meetings. So I think it's worse, it looks worse because of over the years these things have slipped. But as Andrew said, we're certainly going to have the dialogue, and actually hopefully things will be a lot better and we'll be able to move forward from here.
Good, thank you.
Just a question for me before Matthew comes in, or any other comments. Or Matt, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just a brief couple of words, really. I think one of the things we perhaps not been strong enough as a team on the last year is our engagement with the council senior leadership team. We have on the back of this and some recent reports that engagement, and we know they're fully behind us in delivering this plan, and that's something that I think that will be a positive for next year. The thing I was going to perhaps say as well, is in earlier reports, we've obviously shared with you the fact that it's a new team. We've filled a number of vacant posts. We're bringing new team members onto board. What we haven't done is joined up the dots for you, and linked to that early in the year said, the likelihood is that we will probably not deliver the audit plan. So it comes as a bit too much, perhaps, of a surprise this late in the year that's the case. I think we can build some of that into our reporting next year, albeit with the team that we now have in place. I'd expect, and Andrew and I will have having some conversation about this, about how much of an audit plan is delivered next year.
Thanks, Matt. The only point I was going to make is maybe it is a question, picking up Councillor Prothero's point, is that obviously we're all new from May last year, and lots of people more newer than I. So is whether or not we should look at the audit plans for the last couple of years and look which are the priorities, the high priorities, which have been shifted year in, year out. And actually say to the management team, because obviously we can support the audit team here and you, Matt, and your team, to actually say enough's enough. We're not having this pushed off any further now. We want this matter dealt with now or this year, because otherwise they'll just slip and slip and slip. And I think if it was a priority in 2019 and it's priority in 2020 and 2021, then why haven't we dealt with it? So I think it may be a little work for Andrew or Joan to say, look, these were priorities back over the last 4 years. This has been a priority. For one reason or another, the directorate's not engaged or has been unable to because of staffing. But someone's got to say enough's enough. And if it needs to be done, then it be done. And I think, given the view of the management team, as you said, Matt, as well, are very supportive, and I would hope, the cabinet would be very supportive, is that we say, look, we put a bit of added emphasis that the Governance and Audit Committee now want this matter dealt with, rather than it slip and slip and slip. I don't know what the officer's view would be on that, but I think, for me, we just can't let these things continue to float in ether for year in, year out.
Thank you, Chair. I think we can certainly do some analysis on that in terms of the audit planning process and identify, if we can and where we can, the reasons for that delay. Some of it might be within my team. I'll have to accept that and I'll take that on the chin. Some of it will be in the service area. Some of it will be down to resources. So okay. we can certainly look to do some analysis on that.
Okay, Nigel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My comments are linked to this, really, so I just wanted to come in on that.
Yeah.
I think one of the fundamental understandings here is that this is a internal audit come up with a plan. Management either should hopefully obviously be feeding into that plan, but it's an internal audit, either versus or preferably internal audit and management together plan that is trying to be completed. That's not actually correct. This is all, the basis of this is risk. And there's a risk behind there where we're saying, actually, this internal audit is required to give assurance over a particular area. And management should be seeing this as something actually they want to have, because if that risk, and it's been extant since 2019, if we're still saying that risk is high, clearly it hasn't been dealt with sufficiently well, in which case you want internal audit to come in, because internal audit then gives you a report that says this risk is not being managed enough, we need more resources, or we need something else to happen. And it's your route for management to actually say, we can't deal with this. And I think it's that positive side of it we need to get across and get through. And that's the worry for me, is we've got risks that are outstanding for, say, 3 years, and we've got no visibility over how well that's being managed. So I think it's that message. And again, if we as a governance and audit committee can support that message and help you to deliver that, then that's key for me. And I think sort of leads on to my comments, really, which are when we discussed the internal audit plan last year. I'd have to go back to the minutes to look at what we said, but certainly we asked for it to be risk-based so that we could see where the risks, I know you do it risk-based, but it wasn't in the document, so could we see that? And again, understand a bit more about that priority status, where that comes from. And I think then for this report, then that feeds through to that by saying to us, well, actually, could we have in the audit plan, could we at least have quarters where we say this review is planned to be undertaken in Q1 or Q2 or Q3, and then the progress report can then this one that you get that we're just looking at now can then say, well, actually that's slipped from Q1 to Q2, or actually this is one that due to resources we think may be delayed and we might not be able to be completed. So again, we've just got that little bit more tracking information. Again, with that priority status in there, we could then see, or do we need to be concerned about that earlier in the year? And I think, Matt, your point earlier about the sort of surprise at this stage of the year. I mean, we have been told that there was going to be issues. We knew from previous updates that it did say that some of the audit plan wouldn't be delivered. I think the surprise for me is the extent of that and that it's high priorities. So I think it's more just the visibility of what is being delayed and the fact that we haven't had any control in what is being delayed to when, and that it's high priority. So I think it's just our ability to just understand the difficulties, support you where we can, acknowledge the ones you can't do and why, but that it's controlled rather than just being, here it is at the end of the year. So I think hopefully there's a few pointers there. And again, I'm happy to work with with the team if it comes down to, sending me a draft report that format and saying, will this do? And me sending comments back in between meetings. I'm happy to do that if that would be helpful.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Are there any other comments from anyone? No. Okay. The recommendation then is that we note the contents of the report and the progress made against the 22-23 internal audit annual risk-based plan. Someone prepared to move, please? Can I have someone to move? Thank you, Councillor Prothero. Seconder. Thank you, Nigel. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Andrew. The next report is the recommendation monitoring. Joan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, this report, the purpose of this report is to provide members with a position statement on the internal audit recommendations made, implemented and outstanding as at the 12th of April 2023. Appendix A illustrates that in respect of the audits from the 21-22 plan, 8 recommendations are outstanding as the agreed implementation date has been exceeded. 4 of these are medium and 4 are low risk recommendations across 3 audits, and work is ongoing with service areas to implement these, whilst a further 8 recommendations still have a future target date. And details of these are at Appendix B. Of the 90 recommendations that have been made to date in respect of the 22-23 audits, 63 have been implemented. 1 has not been accepted by management, but an alternative solution was agreed. And 2 medium recommendations are outstanding. 1 of these is specific to shared regulatory services and their workforce plan, whilst the other is a need to update the insurance guidance available to staff to ensure insurance implications are fully considered for the purchase of assets. So they're kind of particular to certain service areas. These are also detailed at Appendix B, and to note 24 recommendations have yet to reach the implementation date for those. Just to go to conclude, really, the monitoring of recommendations is undertaken regularly by auditors, as you know, and any undue delays or issues are highlighted to senior management and ultimately this committee. And since our last meeting, it's pleasing to note that a report did go to the senior leadership team and they were very supportive. And as a result, now we've got a programme in place whereby they will have a similar report to what yourselves get. So they are fully informed as the position of outstanding recommendations. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, for that. We'll go to questions, and Councillor Goodjob.
That's extremely good to hear, Joan. I just wanted to ask quickly about the declarations of relationships. This seems like a very simple recommendation to us. It's a simple email, simple thing to do. So the fact that it's taken 15 months is not particularly exciting news to hear. Have you had any correspondence regarding that since? The item says that you've had no date provided. Has been any communications at all?
If I can answer that, yes,
Sure,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. We've been trying to get a date. Unfortunately, where this service lies, it's within the team that has been heavily involved in the implementation of the new Oracle Fusion system. So I was unable to get a specific date for this report, but I'm taking comfort that our senior officers are taking it on board, and we will hopefully address this as soon as possible.
Thank you. Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one on the PCI DSS ones. Just wondering where we're at with those now. I think the new dates were around now, so just wondering where we're at with those, because that was a limited assurance report last year. So just if there's any update on those at all now.
I've not had any update. I don't know if Gemma's still on the call, but this was something that was all falling in line with an implementation of a new upgraded system that they were doing. So as a result, it all fell behind. I know Matt's here, and maybe Matt will have more detail.
Matt, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, that's Joan is correct. That was dependent on us putting a new cash management system in. That's been very much delayed, but that went in a couple of weeks ago. So we can now come in and finish this action off.
Great. I look forward to those coming off the list as well.
Thank you, Matt. Matthew?
Yeah, at the risk of labouring the point on Councillor Goodjohn's point, I think that declaration relationships one just stuck out to me because it was on the February list with no update as well, and I guess it's the question of at what point do we start escalating? At what point do we start stamping our feet, for lack of a better term? Given where we are, given the context of the medium priority, and given the fact that it seems the most simple thing to be done.
Andrew?
I think this is the fair comment, really, Chair. Thanks. It's something we'll take on board. We've got an escalation process within the team, which is pretty robust. And what we need to think about is how we escalate that outside of the team. We talked about it in terms of the charter and my responsibilities. I can talk you through with Joan and with Matt in terms of building in the next steps process, I think, because it's been quite informal up to date. Because we do very rarely get into a situation like this. We generally get very good responses from our service managers. This is a bit of an outlier, so we'll consider it and we'll work it through in terms of a process which we can then document in terms of escalation, and whether that's taking it through to Matt and through to SLT, or whether we bring through to Governance and Audit Committee. It's something we'll work on. But fair point, and we'll certainly reflect on it.
Thank you. Any other questions, anyone? Any comments? No, I think the only comment I'd make, which is again picking up from Councillor Goodjohn and Matthew's question, is that the assurance now that these matters are being referred up to the SLT. So this pro forma will be in front of the SLT shortly, and I'm sure that hopefully with Tom and maybe Matt at the SLT meeting, or whoever goes, that there will be that assurance now that this matter will be dealt with. I think, as Councillor Goodjohn said, it was picked up in the last minutes of the last meeting. So hopefully when we come to June's committee, let's hope it will be removed and action will have been taken. So I'm pleased that the SLT are taking greater interest in these matters. Okay, are there any other comments from anyone? If there are none, then the recommendation is that I think we just note the information provided in respect to the status of the recommendations made, and basically that the SLT are picking these up now as part of their sort of annual, their monthly work stream. So if that's the position, someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Matthew. And second, Councillor Goodjohn. Anyone against? Nope. Okay, thank you everyone for that. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Andrew. Item 12, updated forward work programme.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take this one. This is the updated work programme for the municipal year for your committee in terms of when you are likely to receive the reports, the standard items plus other information from including treasury management, risk assurance, kind of fraud, etc. So there'll be reports coming from internal audit, from external audit, and from other officers within the organisation as well. It gives you a rough idea of when those reports will be received and presented into committee. There's an element of flexibility, and we'll keep committee informed as that progresses. And there may be additional reports that come in if committee feel that they need to bring in or call in various managers for whatever reason, the reasons you see fit. In terms of your next meeting in June, we've just outlined the key reports which are going to come to that meeting, and happy to take any questions, Chair, but it's fairly straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Any comments? Just a comment from me, Andrew, that item 1 and 2 on the agenda needs to be the appointment of chair and vice chair, apart from the minutes and that. So if that can be picked up, that'd be great.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. And the recommendation then is that we approve the forward work programme, and I think we endorse the schedule of the items for the next meeting, 12th of June 23. Nigel, did you want to say anything? Sorry. No. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Nigel. Can I have a second there? Yes, Prothero, thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone against that? The recommendations? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew. Item 13 on the agenda is any other items which the chair has decided are urgent. Part 1, there are none. If we go into the part 2, which is supposed to be the closed session, any other items which the chair has decided are urgent. Part 2, there are none. Therefore, before I close the meeting, can I just thank the officers, our colleagues from Audit Wales, your good selves as members of the committee for a very productive meeting this evening, and I now close the meeting. Thank you all very much.